Welcome to the Farmstead Forum Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Faulkner. Today we're diving into immune-boosting tips to help you stay healthy this winter. From the power of vitamin D to elderberry, echinacea, and fermented foods, we'll explore how you can naturally strengthen your immune system. Plus, I'll be sharing some other health tips to keep you feeling your best all season long. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Farmstead Forum Podcast, your southern hub for all things homesteading. Come grow with us today, where we'll explore natural ways to keep our homesteads healthy and thriving. With flu season around the corner, today we're focusing on boosting your immune system the natural way. We'll dive into the importance of vitamin D, how to take it effectively, and explore some powerful herbs like elderberry and echinacea. Plus, we'll look at fermented foods that can strengthen your gut health. By the end of this episode, you'll have a toolbox of immune-boosting tips to help you stay well this winter. I'll also share some great resources where you can learn even more. So let's get started. First of all, I would like to say this is, I am a nurse practitioner, but I don't know your personal medical history, your allergies, and all this. All that to say, this is not personal medical advice. Anything that I talk about cannot be construed as that. You need to talk with your doctor about your personal history and any advice that they might make. But I will give you some theoretical tips and information about these different supplements and vitamin Ds. I am also a trained ER nurse. I worked for ER, did some travel nursing before we moved back to Georgia, and had an extensive background in, traditional medicine before I became a nurse practitioner. And I've enjoyed primary care. I'm enjoying more of a functional medicine approach now. So let's start with vitamin D, because I get this question all the time. Well, it's flu season. What can I do to strengthen my immune system? And my first response is you need to be taking vitamin D. So what does vitamin D do in the body? Vitamin D has several different receptors, which could either make it ineffective, such as, affecting your immune system, having a poor immune system where you're not absorbing, your body's not able to convert the vitamin D. Certain chemicals, certain things can actually bind to the vitamin D receptors. So a lot of people have vitamin D deficiency. When I check blood work as a nurse practitioner, family practice, the lab core range says 30 to 100 is quote unquote normal. But what is optimal? That depends on who you're talking to. I would say a minimum of 60 to 80 is a healthy range, an optimal range to shoot for. Some doctors say 80 to 100. So there is what's called a toxicity level where you can go too high. You might get palpitations and those kind of symptoms that would make it scary to take too much vitamin D. But it's kind of hard to take too much vitamin D unless you're intentionally doing it for chronic disease purposes. I will say it's effective for your immune system. It helps with mood, energy. Vitamin D helps with your bone health. If you don't have vitamin D, you won't absorb calcium in your diet. Also, sleep is very important too for helping you rest well. So a lot of people are not eating vegetables. So vitamin D requires vitamin K to absorb and metabolize. And then the vitamin K puts the calcium that you do eat in your diet into your bones. If you have a high vitamin D and you don't have enough dark green veggies in your diet, or you're not taking a vitamin D with vitamin K2 added, then you run the risk of calcium building up in your arteries long term, which can lead to heart disease. So, there's always a balance. There's something you have to consider when you're doing a supplement. There's always some opposite effect that you have to consider. So I always stress vitamin K2 when you're taking vitamin D. If you're on a really high dose prescription straight vitamin D, where you just do it once a week, you do need to add a separate vitamin K2, because those are not marketed. They're not sent from the pharmacy packaged like as vitamin D high dose with vitamin K. None of them that I'm aware of have the vitamin K2 added. So you have to get it separate. Also, magnesium is important to take, because magnesium also helps vitamin D break down and metabolize and to make it effective. So if you're magnesium deficient, a lot of people are,
some foods that we eat to block magnesium absorption from, say, nuts or corn, different foods that you eat. So you have to consider that. Just assume that you're already magnesium deficient, because our food really isn't food anymore. The soil we plant in is not nutrient rich anymore. It's dirt, it's not soil, it's not living. So we have to consider, just assume you're vitamin D deficient, magnesium deficient. You can check those levels with your doctor, but it's not going to hurt you to take a little bit of extra magnesium to make sure that your vitamin D is breaking down. Get your doctor to check your level. Just get a baseline vitamin D before you start taking supplements. You may work outside a lot. I find for my Hispanic patients and my darker skin patients that even though they work outside, they will have a low vitamin D level. And I think that's where some of the diet comes into play, as far as like corn and different, ethnic foods that would limit your absorption of magnesium and stuff in your diet. But historically, darker skin individuals or obese individuals also have low vitamin D. But I will say everyone pretty much, I can bet my next paycheck, the first time I check their vitamin D, unless they're on a supplement, is going to be low. But get your doctor to check it, and then check it again 2 or 3 months after you started your vitamin D, because you might need to take more than you think. I will tell you personally, for me, I take anywhere from 5 to 10,000 units per day. That's how much my body needs. I have some patients that have absorption issues in their gut, and they have to take 10 to 15,000 units per day. And depending on your chronic disease conditions, there is a book that I want to list in the podcast notes, in the show notes. It is called How Not to Die with True High-Dose Vitamin D Therapy, Coimbra's Protocol and the Secrets of Safe High-Dose Vitamin D3 and Vitamin K2 Supplementation. So I've linked that in the show notes to a book on Amazon. And it's basically giving you dosing protocols for people with multiple sclerosis, or which is also known as MS, different chronic like arthritis and different chronic conditions. Your immune system is very dependent on vitamin D. So if you consider someone who's tried a lot of different therapies for their chronic condition, this may be something they want to look into and talk to their doctor about. And vitamin D also should be taken after a meal. It's a fat soluble vitamin. All your A, D, E, and K vitamins are fat soluble, which means they require food or fat in the food to metabolize and absorb into your body. So that's my first tip I usually recommend when it comes to immune system boosting in the wintertime, because everyone's vitamin D deficient. So number 2, a lot of people ask me about elderberry. So elderberry syrup, which is a common plant you'll see just growing in the dishes on the side of the road. It has white blooms. People harvest the berries for the blooms. Depends on what you're using it for. But you will use elderberry oftentimes during flu season. A couple of things about elderberry. I'm linking a website called the White Rabbit Institute, and it's very informative. Gives you some tips about elderberry. It's indications when to use it. That will be in the show notes. But it is high in antioxidants and vitamins. It also reduces inflammation. It is an immune stimulator. So this is one of the herbs I would urge you, if you have an autoimmune disease, I would tell you do not take elderberry chronically. Some people are like, oh yeah, I take a spoonful of elderberry syrup every day. Don't do that, because if you have lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, any type of autoimmune condition, or if you're type O blood type or type B blood type, you're predisposed to autoimmune, you don't want to trigger or stimulate an already aggressive immune system. And aggressive in a bad way, not like attacking infection, but attacking your own body. So that's what elderberry could do. It could trigger that. If you were taking it on a daily basis, it could worsen this autoimmune condition. So it is a potent antiviral for flu. But I usually tell people, take it when you need it. Just save it for when you need it, because, you don't want to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's my saying. But if you don't need it, if you're not actively sick, why you don't have to necessarily take that. I would stress more vitamin D every day than I would something like elderberry. But it is good to have in your kitchen, in your herb So consider, getting either a syrup or dehydrating the berries if you have some on your homestead. And it can be very effective, especially early on when you're treating or combating the flu. And our next herb that I wanted to talk about is actually echinacea. Now, I heard about echinacea well before I heard about elderberry. And everyone, says, oh, echinacea tea, there's echinacea supplements you can take it, when you're sick. We did discuss echinacea in detail in my herbal fellowship. I did look up some more information about it, mainly from the White Rabbit Institute. I also linked an article on our show notes. It says it's used for herpes infections, which is, a virus, upper respiratory infections, for pain. It's also used as an antibacterial, antiviral, or urinary tract infections, and also digestive issues. The main thing that I remember from my herbal fellowship is that it is effective if you start it at the onset of symptoms, like within the first day, maybe 2 days max. If you start it 3-4 days into the flu, you're not going to see the results that you would think you would see. And you have to dose it as a tea like every few hours, like every 3-4 hours during your first few days of illness, especially to help with those flu symptoms. So just consider, it is a great herb. It's very powerful, but the timing's crucial. You don't want to delay it or brush your symptoms off, and then it's too late because it won't work at that point. I did grow some echinacea this spring, and I thought when I planted it that the seeds were no good. So I planted something else in there. And then lo and behold, in the spring, the seeds germinated. But I think I planted them in the fall originally. But when they germinated, it was like 4 or 6 months after I originally planted. And I just kept watering it because it had some other plant sprout. It was a tomatillo plant or something sprout up out of it. So I actually kept watering it, and it survived. So I think it maybe just needed a little cold, stratification, needed to be out in the greenhouse during the wintertime. So it definitely is easy to grow and as a perennial. So when you want to start an herb garden, a medicinal herbal garden, you can put this and it will come back year after year. A close cousin, I would say, of echinacea is black-eyed Susan, which is actually Rudbeckia. One of my master gardener friends actually wrote an article about Rudbeckia, and she was talking about how impressive the root system is. Now, you wouldn't think of the root, you would think of, the flower, use the flower in teas and such, but the root's actually very medicinal in Rudbeckia. That's another easy one if you wanted to add it to your herb garden. So those are the main medicinal herbs I wanted to talk about that most people think of when they think of flu season or cold. And I did have a book too, I forgot to mention. On Amazon, there's elderberries, The Beginner's Guide to Foraging, Preserving, and Using Elderberries for Health Remedies, Recipes, Drinks, and more. So you can look at that on the show notes. And then if you are interested in the article I put on echinacea, there's also the link to that. But it's a great herb. I think it's useful. It's easy to grow. I think it's a great tool to have in your home apothecary. Okay, so moving on to one of our last things I was going to talk about is fermented foods. Fermented foods are important for your immune system year-round, not just during the wintertime, but fermented foods are important to increase your gut flora, your good bacteria in your gut. I always tell patients that your chronic diseases, anything that is, anything from autoimmune to frequent infections, that your immune system is directly linked to your gut health. If we don't have those good bacteria in our stomach, such as from taking antibiotics a lot when you're younger or as an adult, then taking on top of that a lot of steroids, for a cold or for joint inflammation or back pain or something, sometimes you'll get a steroid. That increases harmful fungus like yeast and candida that could also lower your bacterial numbers and disrupt that balance of flora in your gut. So we're real worried, I think, about sometimes eating the wrong kind of bacteria when we make food at home. But it is important to consider eating fermented foods, also fermented drinks. I have started making kombucha. It's so easy. You don't need a kit to do it. I just used for my starter. I used a kombucha bottle from the store, literally fed the kombucha sweet tea, covered it in a fermentation vessel, and left it for 2 weeks. Then the mother forms on the top of the kombucha. And then you can take what's in there, which is now, so the mother is also called the, if I'm not mistaken, the SCOBY. So SCOBY stands for, it's an acronym, SCOBY, stands for symbiotic cultures of bacteria and yeast. So it's a healthy balance between the bacteria and the yeast that's in your kombucha vessel. And so when you make the kombucha for 2 weeks, it needs to ferment. Then you can take the kombucha from there, and about a fourth to a third of your serving glass, I would say, to fill a bottle, about a fourth to a third full, and then put organic fruit juice on top of that and stick a balloon on the top. All right. So now what's going to happen, the sugars from the fruit are actually going to boost the good bacteria in the kombucha, and it will start to ferment, bubble, and release gases. So the balloon, once it inflates, then it's ready to drink. It's fermented. You can stick it in the fridge at that point with a lid and just keep feeding your SCOBY, so that way you have that continuous supply of good bacteria for making future kombucha batches. So that's how I've started adding fermented drinks into our home. And my boys, one of them, I'll say Reagan, he'll drink it, especially if I have to put him, when I don't really want to, I have to sometimes put him on an antibiotic. I will put him also on kombucha, supplements when I'm doing that. So I kind of offset a little bit of that effect on his gut flora. So, but my 6-year-old Holland won't touch it. So it's a little hard with kids. You have to be creative. Most kids like pickles. You could ferment pickles from your garden. I really like pickled okra. You could also ferment that. Anything you can ferment and preserve it that way. But I just think this is just my perception. Maybe it's not for most people, but I think that there's this concept that if we don't can it, that it's dangerous or it could have botulinum or something in it. But fermented foods, they have, a healthy amount of bacteria. And if you sell it and it does not smell good to you, trust your sniffer. Don't eat that. So, you can definitely go wrong with a batch if it's contaminated. But, it's why God gave us a sense of smells, because we're able to tell that. Now with botulinum and canning, it's a totally different story. You can't smell botulinum, but you definitely can, tell when you fermented something that it has not, something's off in the balance of the bacteria. Kimchi is another good option for fermented foods. You can do kimchi with sweet potato vines. I've used the leaves for my sweet potato vines to do that. And of course, you can use other greens and stuff from your garden. It's really the spices that makes it the kimchi. Sauerkraut. A lot of people make sauerkraut. You can use the cabbage. You can also do sauerkraut with the sweet potato leaves. So there's a lot of different options for making fermented foods at home. And I did find a cool farmhouse book reference, which I linked in the show notes. It is called The Farmhouse Culture Guide to Fermenting or Crafting Live Cultured Foods and Drinks with 100 Recipes from Kimchi to Kombucha. So that one's more on drinks, or it does have the kimchi, so it's on other fermented foods. And what I'm really excited about is our Fall Farmstead Forum on November the 16th this year in Carrollton, Georgia. We have a fermentation class by Teresa Brown and Sandy Brown is her husband. He'll be helping with the class, and they're going to do a live demonstration. They're going to have some samples. It's going to be an amazing class to attend. Teresa co-teaches the fermenting workshops with Country Gardens Farm in Noonan. So they're an awesome resource if you're looking for a local workshop if you're in the West Georgia area. And so she will be at our event. You can talk with her, pick her brain about some different recipes. She does have some books she'll mention too in her workshop. So we talked a lot about our vitamin D importance, some different herbs we can do for our immune boosting when we do catch something. Also, the fermented foods is a good long-term strategy to boost your immune system. Something else that I would suggest, this goes back to like little kids because they put their mouth on everything and they touch everything. So, and they share toys. So they're at school. I would suggest to make sure you're stressing hand washing at home. I'm not a mask believer. When all this stuff came out, during the pandemic, I was convinced that the surgical masks were not preventing the spread of anything because the actual virus was so small that it just floats right through there. So what it does prevent, like with flu and other viruses that aren't that small, is a droplet spray that if they cough or sneeze, that it would, not get all over somebody else. But in general, kids aren't going to wear a mask. And for flu season, I stress more of hand washing because where do kids usually cough or sneeze? They cough in their hand. And so you want to make sure you're teaching them coughing in their elbow, covering their cough, but not into their hand. And then also hand washing because they will touch, they'll share things at school. Other kids pick their nose, maybe coughing, not feeling well that day. But then if your child is washing their hands or more conscious of that, they start understanding that, oh, this is how I get sick, is if I touch something else that someone else that was sick touched, then I might, pick up whatever they have. And that starts probably around 4 or 5. I would say kids can understand that a little better. And you can just supervise them at that point, and the older kids too pretty much catch on to it pretty quick. So that's a lot of really what I wanted to talk about. This is a side note because I was talking a little bit about earlier the blood type diet, how that can affect someone's immune system. Get your doctor to check your blood type. If you don't know, it's good to know for emergency reasons, just to know who you could receive a transfusion from if you needed to. But also, there's such a thing as the blood type diet book. I like the book that a naturopathic doctor wrote by Peter Diadamo, and it's called Eat Right, the number 4, Your Type. And he talks about how blood types originated, kind of the background, but then he'll go into detail in each chapter about each blood type, the foods that are most beneficial, less beneficial foods to avoid. And it's interesting because since I've started paying attention to blood types, checking patients' blood types, I am noticing disease patterns. And Dr. Diadamo also mentions this in his book. Not everybody knows their family history, but you can find out your blood type. And there are patterns of cancer, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune. There are those patterns based off your blood type. So your parents, pass off their genes, which includes your blood type. Whether it's recessive or dominant, you'll get a certain blood type. So you'll have the same similar risks as your parents, but you may not have the same blood type as them, depending on what their blood type is. If it was recessive, if one parent was dominant, the other one was recessive. So didn't really mean to get into genes in this podcast, but the point being, please, educate yourself and look into the blood type diet. I think it's a great thing to know. And then if people are struggling with weight loss too, because if you're overweight, you're going to be unhealthy. Your immune system, you're going to be more likely to get sick. So sometimes knowing your blood type can also help you know why, for instance, why is the keto diet not working for you? Maybe it's because your blood type is A and you need more of a vegetarian type diet. Don't take my word for it though, because if you know you're A and you're like, I'm never going to have a vegetarian diet, go see why that is. Like, why does that author of the book say, stay away from these types of foods? Like, what could happen? to my health if I don't. You might be more at risk for heart disease or diabetes, with eating certain foods. But type A does often struggle with losing weight on keto because it's a strictly animal-based protein diet, whereas they need more vegetable protein sourced foods. So just interesting. I really have been exploring a lot of different types of medicine in the last 2 years, especially, but herbal medicine, functional medicine, considering that maybe traditional medicine doesn't have it all figured out. And I will just tell you, since the pandemic, I have been a lot less trusting of our 3-letter government agencies. So all that being said, do your own research, find out for yourself, make your own choices. Don't just take my word for it. Don't take somebody else's word for it. Just educate yourself and make your health a priority. If you don't have your health, you don't have much. So, that's all I'm going to really say about that. I could talk about other things, but I'd probably get kicked off here. So a little bit about my upcoming speaking engagements. I am going to speak at a private dinner by Carol EMC. They're a local power company, and they're real big with farmers. They're also a sponsor for our fall Farmstead Forum. But they invited me to talk about homesteading at this agribusiness dinner, which is October 24th. So if you're going to be there, I'll see you there. And also the pumpkin patch at Key Farms. I'll be there on October 20th. I'll be a vendor sharing some information about the Farmstead Forum event we're hosting. And then also I will be supporting and sponsoring a wine basket for the Christmas for a Cause, which is a silent auction in Carrollton, Georgia. That's on November the 2nd. We're going to also probably put some free tickets to our fall Farmstead Forum in that wine basket. Whoever wins that basket will be very happy, I hope. And then also, of course, we have the Fall Farmstead Forum, which is November 16th in Carrollton, Georgia, at the old fairgrounds at venue 1625 in Carrollton. So if you haven't got your tickets already, go on our website, it's farmsteadforum.com. If you look at the Get Tickets link, also on the menu drop down, there is the link there. I did talk to some families this last week about, whether they were coming, if they were interested. And I'm getting a lot of feedback. And so what I did lower our ticket price for this year. We are a one-day event. I understand price is also always a factor when you have a family. Most homesteaders have families. So keeping that in mind, I want to make it easier for families to attend. So I did lower our ticket price. Kids 11 and under are free. Teenagers are $15 and adults are $60. So if you want to come and sharpen your homesteading skills, learn about herbal medicine, food fermentation, grass-fed beef on the homestead, if you're interested in getting a dairy cow, Anne's going to be talking about how to make a small homestead profitable, also preserving the harvest year-round, beekeeping for Michael Shellnut. We have some great speakers lined up, and I'm just super excited to finally see this dream of mine come to fruition. I've been so blessed. We have several volunteers who are helping behind the scenes, and I'm just surrounded by great people, and I just am thankful for that. So I did want to close with a scripture because this verse really spoke to me. And I don't know how many of you will still be listening by this point, but I was reading in Psalms yesterday, and just, all this event planning is about to kill me, y'all, really. But I really went to the word for encouragement because that's where we have to find it. We can't depend on ourselves. We can't, at some point we'll fall apart, and God is just right there waiting for us to go to him. But just thinking about the time that we are in this country, and just, we have fear and worry and what's going to happen. But let me encourage you to read Psalms 91. Verse 9 says, if you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. And so let that just be an encouragement that God is there. He's waiting for you to depend on him, to ask him for help. And no matter what happens this fall, We are, you know, God's got it. He's in control. We're not in control. We like to think we are, but we're not. And so that's a big part of, I want to just encourage you that this is, no matter what happens, it's his will, because that's just what he has ordained. Even I know there's a proverb that says, many are the plans of a man's heart, but from the very response of his, tongue basically is from the Lord. We can intend in our heart to do all these things. Bad people can intend to do certain things, but God ultimately controls the outcome. So don't stress, don't worry. Stress is bad for your immune system too. Just, know that God's got it and we're going to be okay. And, come to the Fall Farmstead Forum, get to know people that you can trust in your community and learn something new. It's going to be fun. Bring your kids. We're going to have lots of kids activities. We've got the Mountain Man from Heritage Days at the Ag Center. He's going to come out and talk to the kids. He's going to set up a campfire. Likely we'll have a little petting zoo, possibly a bouncy house. And we're talking about yesterday too, adding a few kids games in there. So there'll be plenty for the kids to do, and they need to be around this too. So feel free to bring your family, tell your friends about the event, and come meet your Farmstead tribe. If y'all have any questions, reach out by email. And like I said, just, hang in there. We're going to make it. And I'll probably talk to you guys in a month because I'm still doing all this planning, and it'll take about a month. I'll give myself some grace from this podcast and just plan to touch base then. Y'all take care.
Hey, thanks for listening. Join our Facebook group and follow us on Instagram for the latest updates. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website for upcoming events. For sponsorship opportunities, reach out to us through our website. See you next time.